Hello, my name is Christina Raver. I am the Executive Director of Golden Apple Foundation. I want to thank you for volunteering to serve as a Golden Apple Classroom Observer and participating in the selection process for the Golden Apple Awards. I'm here today to introduce Dr. Marianne Wam, who will be conducting your training today. Dr. Wam has served on the Golden Apple Foundation Board of Directors for at least 10 years, including a term as president from 2012 to 2015. She has spent most of her career in education, including most recently at the college level. Thank you very much, and I present to you Dr. Marianne Wam.
Thank you, Christina. It's delightful to be here today with you and with our classroom observers. I want to thank you all for coming today, and I promise you that the teaching you're going to see is outstanding. We have 20 finalists. Each of them is remarkable, or they would not be among the finalists. I realize that you have in front of you the printout from the PowerPoint, so I'm going to refer to that as we go along, and I'm going to start with the page that's entitled Observation Instructions. Point number 1, do not interact with students or teachers during each observation. It's obviously appropriate when you come in the classroom to speak to the teacher, to acknowledge the students if they speak to you, but do not engage them in conversation. It's not as likely to be a problem at this level this year because we're at the intermediate or secondary level, whereas the little kids like to come up and visit. Also be aware of your body language. If you see something that startles you or amuses you, just kind of keep it to yourself so that the classroom is not aware that you are reacting to something that has happened. The second point, attend specifically to items on the observation form. You will be given a form and you will be asked to follow that in the classroom and then to make notes on it as are appropriate. You score each area, making certain to include an explanation when selecting outstanding. In other words, if you mark something you see as outstanding, you need to provide a short explanation of why you feel that it is outstanding. The next point is very important. Keep all portfolio documents and your observer assessments in strict confidence. Quite frankly, you should not discuss what you see when you observe, even with fellow observers. It is your observation, your vantage point, and we want to keep it that way. And then you will submit the completed observation forms and copies of portfolios to the Golden Apple office. And I believe those should be submitted as soon as possible after you complete the observation. Okay, identifying excellent teachers. As Christina remarked earlier, I've spent several years at the university level and primarily in teacher training. And involved in that training was my observing student teachers in the classroom. So I learned something that worked for me every time. When I go into a classroom to observe a student teacher, I just sit for about 5 minutes and ask myself, how would it feel to be a student in this classroom? And I do that before I start taking notes or being aware of specific strategies. So I suggest that you do that. Just sit and enjoy the atmosphere for a minute. Excuse me. That would cover your feelings or your sense of classroom atmosphere, which is the first point on the PowerPoint. Secondly, be aware of the teacher's rapport with the students. Does she seem comfortable with them, and do they with her? The classroom rapport goes a long way in providing excellent teaching. Classroom management. Is the teacher in charge of the classroom? Does the classroom feel well managed? Lesson content is very important. You will have an outline of the lesson that's being presented before you, and you will follow that along as the teacher presents the content. Frequently, there are segues from what is on the paper because that's what good teaching is about, being able to go with the moment. But be aware of the content of the lesson and the teaching techniques that he or she uses. Okay, you have the PowerPoint in front of you that I will be referring to behind me. At this time, we're going to talk about specifically identifying excellent teachers, and we're going to visit the following points: classroom atmosphere, rapport with students, classroom management, lesson content, teaching techniques, and professionalism. First, let's talk about classroom atmosphere. As Christine mentioned earlier, most of my career has been involved with teaching, and in the last few years at the university level. And during that time, I was involved in teacher education, did a lot of supervision or observation of student teachers. And I learned during that time the easiest way for me to get a sense of a classroom and a sense of the teaching that's going on is when I go in the classroom just to sit for a few minutes, not with my pencil and paper, just to sit and see ask myself, how would it feel to be a student in this classroom? And then you can get specific, but I suggest you do that. You sit for a few minutes and just soak up the atmosphere, if you will. And speaking of atmosphere, that is the first point on our list. Does the teacher create a positive atmosphere by being supportive, using students' ideas, and praising their achievements? Is the classroom environment safe and conducive to learning? And is there evidence of student work displayed throughout the classroom? Now, frankly, that is more apt to happen at the elementary level than at the secondary level. Many of you will be at middle school and high school. I guess most of you will. And frequently, teachers display student work, but not consistently. Okay, we are ready now to move on to rapport with students. Okay, now we are going to look at classroom management. Does the teacher encourage, recognize, and reinforce appropriate conduct and performance? Does the teacher use positive feedback, for example, when a student makes a response to a question? Does the teacher keep the students on task and redirect those who are off task? Quite frankly, you probably will not see any students who are off task. Does the teacher effectively and respectfully manage inappropriate behavior? As I said, there probably won't be any inappropriate behavior, but just in case, does he or she handle it effectively? We're moving to the next point, which is lesson content. Is the lesson presented consistent with the lesson overview that you have been given by the teacher? You will follow along with the overview as he or she presents the lesson, keeping in mind that good teachers are flexible and may depart from the outline just to make the lesson more effective. The content objectives are clearly communicated to the students, but most importantly, do the students appear to understand the lesson? Do they get it? Does the teacher demonstrate a strong grasp of the subject matter? The subject matter about which the teacher is speaking, does he or she seem quite confident and knowledgeable? The lesson content engages students in the learning process. Do the students seem engaged? I think one sign of being engaged is when students ask questions about the lesson that's being presented. And we move on to teaching techniques. The teacher promotes use of critical thinking skills such as problem solving, analysis, and questioning. One way that teachers can do this is by asking questions that don't have a yes or no answer. Lots of questions that start with why get students thinking. Why do you think Columbus wanted to discover a new land? Something that there's not a right answer for, but it gets students thinking about the possibilities. The teacher gives clear, worthwhile, and achievable assignments. He or she uses a variety of teaching techniques to engage the students. One thing I like to see in a classroom, and I think it promotes a positive educational experience, is students working together. You might see that happening in the classrooms that you visit. I hope you do. Just a short description of students working together is a strategy. This is probably not the one you'll see, but one of my favorites, called Think, Pair, Share. Partners talk about a topic, then they write a quick report and they share it. For example, in a high school art class, and I do think we have some art teachers in our 20, a teacher might ask students to compare two Spanish artists, Picasso and Goya, and then talk about their similarities and the differences in their work, and then share that knowledge with the class. The teacher uses methods, materials, and strategies to address varied learning styles. There's some discussion about learning styles, but basically what they're talking about is auditory or visual. And you may think you are one or the other. I frankly think that we're all a combination of both. Students' responses are handled appropriately and constructively. In other words, as I said at the onset, if a student gives a response that is inappropriate, perhaps the teacher might redirect the discussion by saying, does anybody else have a different idea? And next is professionalism. The teacher projects a professional demeanor in the classroom, and he or she models appropriate oral and written communication skills in the classroom, and that would be on the chalkboards, on the bulletin boards. And he or she seems confident, self-assured, and well prepared. I think you will see that. I think you're going to see some incredibly outstanding teaching, and I thank you for your service as a Golden Apple Observer.